In a land of war, death looms around every corner. Chaos and Skaven threaten every nation, the Undead waging war on the Empire, Elves fighting amongst themselves, and the Dwarfs on a constant threat of the Greenskin horde. Too many wars to name them all. Some thought they would be safe behind their city's walls, others knew better. Wives lost husbands, sons lost fathers, and sisters lost brothers. Our story begins with one such loss, a consequence of the war. An apprentice blacksmith in the city of Altdorf, sent there from his hometown of Grung Grom to help construct weapons and armour to feed the war. He too, in his naivety, thought he was safe behind the walls, but he could not have been more wrong. He will soon find out that during war, death looms around every corner.
Throm? Throm Gromison? You're from Gromison?
In the flesh. What can I do for you?
Got a letter for you. Looks important.
Aye, thanks. To my loyal kinsman, I regretfully inform you of the passing of your brother, Grung Grom. He has fallen in battle against the Orc Warboss Grimgor. He fought honourably until his final breath. Please accept my condolences, High King for Grimgorbearer. No, this cannot be! With the news of his fallen brother, there was nothing but one thing on Throm's mind. Doing what dwarves do best, finding the bottom of a glass. Another.
Don't you think you've had enough? Even for a dwarf.
Another! When Throm woke up the next morning, his mind was clear. He wanted revenge. It's what Crom would have wanted had their roles been reversed. He also knew he couldn't just walk into Greenskin lands and demand their warboss's head. He needed help. Perhaps if he could join the army, they would eventually come across Grimgor and he could settle his grudge. Throm had fought under the High King himself. He might be the man to give Throm a place in his army. Throm has been an apprentice for years. Following orders was what he was good at. He might not be the greatest warrior, but any respected blacksmith knows how to handle an axe and shield to some degree. Perhaps that would be enough. My liege, my name is Throm Gromison. My brother was Throm. Aye, he was one of my finest officers. He'll be sorely missed. Now, what can I do for you? I came here to offer you my axe in his place. I'd like to join your army. Son, I've been alive long enough to know why Davy want to join my army. Some join because they feel a sense of duty. Others join for a steady pay. And some, like yourself, join for personal reasons, like avenging a lost brother. They are the most dangerous, the most unpredictable. Those are things unwelcome in the army. Let me give you some advice. Go home, mourn your brother, and move on. Then, if you're still interested, I will welcome you with open arms. Until then, I bid you farewell, and good luck on your travels. Throm had put all his hope into this one plan, but in a mere moment, the High King had shattered his hopes. After some consideration, Throm decided that if he couldn't join an army, perhaps he could build one himself. It would take time and it wouldn't be easy. The Orc Warboss had the largest Greenskin army in the land, but Throm was determined to settle his grudge, one way or another. Not quite sure where to begin, Throm started moving north, towards the town in which he and his brother grew up, Grung Grom. Perhaps his father's friend, Yakov, would be able to help him out.
Throm, it is good to see you again. Welcome home. I just wish it was under different circumstances.
Yakov, you already know.
Yes, your king sent your father a letter as well. I guess they didn't realize he's been dead for years. My condolences, Throm. Your brother was one of the strongest dwarfs I've ever met. Do you remember that night at the tavern, all those years ago, when Crom got so drunk he knocked out 5 of his comrades before we managed to restrain him? If I remember correctly, you were among those 5 comrades.
Aye, I was. I've never been as much of a fighter as he was, but the time has come for me to change that. In fact, it's the reason I've come. As you might understand, I can't just forget about Crom and move on with my life. I have to do something. The king won't accept me into his army, so I shall follow my own. I've been an apprentice all my life, so I know what it's like to follow. Now I must learn to lead, and so, my good Yakov, I've come here looking for recruits.
I won't lie, Throm, it seems to be your king may have had the right idea. I've got a feeling you're going to get yourself killed. However, you also seem like you won't take no for an answer, and I can appreciate your determination. I won't convince anyone here to join you, but I also won't tell them otherwise. Everyone here is free to do as they please. I'll round up some of the men and tell them your story. Whatever happens, Throm, your brother would have been proud.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our Brothers Grudge, my new narrative let's play on the Warsword Conquest mod for Mount & Blade Warband, where we follow Throm's journey for the old world on his quest to settle his grudge. So we've left Grung Grom, where we have recruited 7 volunteers, which is a fairly high number of men, and we make our way over to Karaz Stromgorl, I believe the town is called, where another 6 men have joined the party. Apparently they have also heard the story of Throm from the nearby village of Grung Grom, and they want to join his party as well, and perhaps settle some grudges of their own against the Greenskin horde. So after leaving Grung Grom and having visited Karaz Stromgorl, that is a very hard name to pronounce, we are making our way over, Throm is making his way over to the west, where he comes across a party of Kislev apparently fighting some Sylvanians, and after some consideration, I decide to jump into that battle on the Kislev side, because it's only 12 troops remaining on the vampire count side. And apparently in this game, when you fight a battle like this, when you join a battle like this, as long as you win the battle, it doesn't matter who you side with, there will be no negative diplomacy outcomes for you, essentially. So the vampire counts won't dislike Throm any less, even though he helped destroy one of their armies, essentially. So I joined in the fighting. By the time I actually got to the fight, all the cavalry had mostly done the battle, the damage already. I managed to get a few hits in on some of the units, but I didn't really do too much. But I just hoped to perhaps get a few kills, get some experience that way. I actually left my own men at the back there because I didn't want to risk them against some of the stronger ghost units and things like that. We do manage to pick up one of the prisoner unit, which is good because we can sell him off. We didn't get any money or any experience from that really, because we didn't do any of the killing really. We got a few hits in, but we didn't kill anyone. So I decided to move west, and I realized perhaps I should sell the ghost off in Waldenhof, because where better to sell a ghost slave than in a Sylvanian city. So we go back across the river and head over towards Waldenhof, where we end up selling the ghost slave for a decent amount of money. Every little bit of money helps right now. Like I said, we didn't get any money from that fight just now, so we need a little bit more money because we are almost out, and of course hiring more troops costs more money. So have a look around, and I noticed a bunch of skeletons that I could potentially talk to, maybe hire them into my party, but for now I'm going to leave them. I'm more interested in hiring dwarves, perhaps Empire, even Bretonnian, or elf fellas for that matter. I think dwarves and elves can get along if it's for a good cause. But in this case, I decided to just leave everyone and move on my way. Further west, we're on our way to the Empire lands, where we hopefully can attack some smaller groups of weak enemies and get some experience that way, get some money that way, build up our forces, because of course we can't go after Grimgor just like that. We need a larger force to be able to do that. So after moving further west, I notice some forest goblins. I decide not to attack them because they look like a force that will probably be a little bit too strong for us. Notice not a little band of warriors of 12 deserters, some skeleton marksmen, and I figure maybe we can take those guys. It's always nice to attack deserter units. They're usually not super high, but they are okay-ish units. Sadly though, our army of course is just made up of very weak dwarves. We don't have any armor, we have no real weapons really. My men, or Throm's men I should say, I'm Throm, I'm not me. Throm's men all have little dinky hammers, little small axes and things like that. Nothing really that's going to do a whole lot of damage, so no shields to defend them. And of course we are fighting against skeleton marksmen, which are fairly decent range units. So I decided to eventually start charging at them, because there's no point sitting on a little hill when we have no range units, and they are just going to keep peppering us with arrows. As you can see, some of the men next to me already getting shot. I do have my shield in front of me, but my men are so much faster than me because I got my shield up like that, that they end up taking most of the hits instead of myself. But I do eventually get in there. We get a few hits in here and there, and then start taking out some of the skeleton warriors, as we see our own dwarfs falling next to us as well. Like I said, we have no armor to cover us right now, so it's literally just me with the shield and decent axe really. I do start off with 2 axes, one of them being simply better than the other, so there's no reason to use the second axe. But you can see the dwarves are falling left and right, as well as the skeleton warriors of course, but the skeleton warriors doing a fairly skeleton marksmen I should say, doing a fairly decent job in melee, despite being a ranged unit mostly. It's just because our dwarves are such a low tier unit, and even these marksmen, they have massive shields. They've got sickles as their weapon, which is an interesting choice. Don't think that's going to be too good, but their shields are going to cover them pretty well. Also, I can't hit this guy for the life of me. He kept blocking all of my attacks. As you can see, most of my dwarves already dead or wounded, only a few left, and they finally take out the last man. We can celebrate that as a victory, but only just. It could have gone either way, really, with the skeleton warriors holding their own quite well. Luckily, we do get 4 skeleton marksmen from that, though, as a slave, so we can sell them off and get a little bit more money that way. We pick up a few items as well, so we can sell those later on. Not worth too much money, but anything will help at this point, just so we can get anything going, really, to help us out and recruit more men in the future.
Brother, might I have a word? Of course, speak your mind. Let me start by giving you my sincere condolences. I too have lost kin to the war. I know what you're going through, and as a fellow Dawi, I understand what it's like to hold a grudge. That being said, you've recruited us fresh from our villages. We're no fighters. We might one day be, but if you send us into battle without the proper training, we're going to see a lot more losses, a lot more Dawi losing kin.
I see, you've got a point. We've lost too many men already. I've been following my need for revenge, whilst forgetting I'm responsible for those following me as well. I know of a trainer close by. He's tough, but he'll form us into a force to be reckoned with. Until then, we will only fight those we can take. After that heartfelt conversation with one of my men, I decided it is indeed a good time to start going for some training, and thus I actually end up leveling up my own character towards becoming a bit of a trainer as well. Because I feel like when leading your own men, you need to be able to train them as well. You need to be a better fighter than them so they can learn from you. But besides that, it is a good idea to actually find a real trainer as well, just so we can actually become a better party and perhaps not die as much against groups that we should be able to take out fairly easily in the early game. The skeleton marksman did kill a fair few of our men, and we don't really want to be losing too many men like that anymore against small groups of that nature. So I end up going towards Nuln first of all. I want to sell off those slaves, get a little bit more money, perhaps recruit a few more units in the nearby villages as well. But then we come across a group of Chaos Zealots, which are a really low tier unit, much weaker than the skeleton marksmen. So I figured if we're going to be fighting anything before we get to the trainer, then this is a good group to actually fight. Chaos Zealots really weak, they have no ranged weapons, they have very low amounts of armor, essentially wearing clothes just like ourselves. Their weapons aren't very good either. They're just a very weak unit, and it's a very that's probably the best unit for us to kill in the early game, to gain some experience, gain some items to sell off and things like that, just to build up a little bit. So I decided to just sit on this hill for just a moment and wait for the enemy to get a little closer. There's no real need to sit on the hill because the enemy doesn't have any ranged weapons. We don't have any ranged weapons for that matter. We just there's not really any reason. You'd think you would probably have a ranged advantage, a hill advantage, but it doesn't really do anything until we get to having actual full armies or large armies and things like that. So as you can see, we take out the Chaos Zealots a lot easier than the Skeleton Marksmen. They have no shields or anything like that. They're just flailing away with their small weapons at nothing essentially. And our Dwarfs celebrate in victory once again, this time without losing a single man. We actually end up getting one captured enemy as well, one Chaos Zealot, but I decided to leave him because I figured that the marksmen were probably worth more because they're a higher tier unit than the Chaos Zealots are. So I decided to leave him, let him run off to his friends, and tell the story of Throm who's going to be a menace to this world. So we walk over to the nearby village of Langenfeld, and we recruit a few units just to bolster our ranks a little bit. Notice a group of handgunners, some deserters, but I decided to leave them because that's a group that we don't want to be facing right now. That's what my my dwarf warrior was talking to me about before, is that we shouldn't be fighting groups like that because it's just going to get our men killed, and at that point, what are we really doing this for? So I look around the tavern, see a few more people, decide not to talk to anyone just yet, and just sell off my marksmen, get some money from that as well. I wouldn't say we're rich yet, but we've got a little pretty penny. We can afford to recruit some more units, so you hop over to the town of Wuppertal, get a few more recruits, a lot more Empire recruits, because we have been working for most of our lives as an apprentice in Altdorf in the Empire nation. We have made our contacts, people know who we are. We made weapons for the war that feed the Empire war essentially, and people know who we are, so they're willing to join us fairly easily. We don't have to worry about it too much. You can see some deserters actually running away from us there, but I decided it's time to head over to the training field and start working at making our men better and hopefully getting some experience to level them up enough so we won't die as much in the future.
Greetings. Me and my band of warriors are looking for some training. Are you the man to provide it?
Warriors, is that what you call them? They're a poor excuse for a band of warriors. Yes, I'm your man. Why don't you show me what you've got first?
After the trainer accepted us to train us, it was time to show him what we could already do. So I put up a fight of myself against some of my compatriots, and they were probably feeling bad for Throm because they decided to fight him hand-to-hand with hand-to-hand combat, both of them not using the staves that they've got on their back, instead using just their hands, whereas Throm is using both a sword, a wooden sword of course, but even so, and a shield. So it was a fairly easy fight, so I decided to fight another one against 3 of my compatriots this time. Only getting a bow staff this time and not getting my sword and shield, which is unfortunate. The first guy once again decides that it's a good idea to just use his fists only, so he gets taken out fairly easily. The other 2 men, however, are using proper weapons, I suppose. I mean, wooden weapons, but weapons nonetheless. One of them actually getting an iron shield, which is a little unfair since I only got a dinky wooden shield just now. But he gets taken out as well, and the last man, once again after getting blocked, gets taken out too, just so I can show my men how it's done. You can see that after every one of these battles, my men all get experience, so I get experience. It's not really, for me it's almost essentially nothing, but my men get a decent amount of experience, and everyone that, even the ones that are watching, get experience as well. So it's not just the 4 fighters that I'm fighting against, it's everyone that watches gets some experience as well. So it's a pretty decent way to get a bit of early game experience. Late game is not really going to do much anymore, but in the early game it's a good way to level up your men a little bit, gain some experience into fighting yourself as well without the risk of losing your entire party, for example, if you get completely taken out by by an actual enemy. Essentially, if you get knocked out here, you just lose some well, you don't lose experience, you just don't gain as much experience as you would have otherwise gotten. But yeah, I decided that 3 of the fights is probably enough. Some of my men are now ready to be upgraded, so we end up leveling some of them up. The Empire recruits able to go into either Empire Spearmen or Foresters, essentially going the melee route or the ranged route. I decided to go for the melee route with my Empire recruits, and then probably will upgrade my my Dwarfs into ranged units because they have better high tier ranged units than the Empire units do. So I noticed another Empire Marksman group. I'm not sure if it was the same that we came across earlier, but it's an Empire Marksman deserter group. Only 4 men remaining this time. I think most of them are wounded, so it may have been that group that we came across earlier. So I run up onto the hill here with the idea of having this really lovely hill here. It's a good idea to actually sit towards the back of it and let the enemy come towards us where they won't have any line of sight. So I move forward and try and see where the enemy actually is. And after just a few short moments we get actually shot at, and I decide to move back again with arrows flying over Throm's head left and right. And we move back to basically block all line of sight, so the enemy has to approach us, and then once they finally get into view of our men, I decide to charge in and have my men run at the enemy. I get a few shots on my shield, and you can notice on the bottom right there, the shield almost completely broken after just 2 or 3 hits on the actual shield. So I decide to move back a little bit, let my men get shot, even though they might not have shields. Some of them do, but some of them also do not. The miners, for example, don't have any shields. But I'd rather that my men get shot in this case than I get knocked unconscious. That would be a lot worse. But yeah, we take out all the men. There was only a few of them, but still, they managed to take out 3 of my recruits, my Empire recruits, which is unfortunate. Luckily, we could recruit them fairly easily in this neighborhood, but of course, it's still a bad sign to have men losing to only a few of these enemy units, but again, they had ranged, whereas we didn't. So a lot of my men, once again, ready to be upgraded. I upgrade the Empires or Empire recruits to Spearmen again, and we actually get some of our Dwarfs upgraded to Crossbowmen now, so we only have 1 regular Dwarf left now, a bunch of Miners, and then the Crossbowmen instead as well. I will eventually get some infantry, or sorry, my melee infantry Miners, or Dwarfs as well, I'm sorry. But for now, I figured just having some range, I may as well have all the Dwarfs go ranged and all the Empire recruits go melee. So we come across a group of Wave Watchers, and I decide that once again, I didn't actually know what these units were, whether they would be ranged or melee, but I noticed basically the way they looked like they would be rangers of some kind, so I decided that it's probably likely that they would be ranged, and it does end up being that way. Arrows already flying towards us. So I start running towards the enemy right away, and I actually accidentally give a hold this position order. Actually, no, I don't accidentally do that. I give it to my archers and my infantry. I had them charge forward as well. So my marksmen will be firing back at the enemy and my crossbowmen. Although they wouldn't be doing too much, of course, because they are still low tier troops, so their aim isn't particularly amazing. But at least they're giving some fire while we approach the enemy, so we're not doing nothing essentially. Once we get to the Way Watchers, we start taking them out one by one. A fairly decent unit actually. They look like they're much more or much better equipped than other units we've come across so far. And this guy actually managed to hit me twice, and I almost died from that until one of my Empire spearmen comes to the rescue and just distracts him for just a moment so I can make my escape. Another dwarf coming in as well, and together with those two units we managed to take out the Way Watcher. But you can see how much damage he was doing to me. If he had hit me one more time, anything had hit me one more time at that point, I would have been dead. They get a few more shots off that last one on my shield, and you can see the shield almost breaking again. With several arrows actually stuck in the shield right now, so it's not too much of a surprise that it was going. But even so, this Way Watcher actually getting hit by a lot of my men and finally going down. And once again, cheers from my compatriots. But once again, we lost a fair amount of men. However, before I went to the battle, I knew that they had some prisoners on them. So I figured even if we lost a few men, it would be worth it because we would free up these prisoners to hire them myself as well. Sadly, I noticed after a few moments that these dwarf women and some of the actual dwarfs that we hired as well are unable to be upgraded, so I figured it wasn't really worth keeping them in my party, because if they can't get upgraded anyway, then there's no real need to keep them, because they would just be a unit that's just going to get himself killed essentially, and where's the fun in having my men killed? That's not what we want to do here. So I level up the final units that we have, some more halberdiers, some more spearmen, and some more swordsmen in this case as well. Which is essentially we could go for either the halberdier route or the swordsman route, and I figured I want to get some swords in there. Got a few more crossbowmen as well. Leveled up myself during that final battle too and get another point of charisma and start working my way towards sword trainer points as well, to continue making sure that our men won't die as easily in the coming battles. From meager beginnings, a band of brothers starts to form, united by one man with a grudge to settle. A long road ahead, with many obstacles on its way, and some already behind him. Not being allowed to join the army was a big blow, or perhaps it was a blessing in disguise, for now he leads his own men. However, he had already seen men die following him into battle, something that would haunt him until he breathed his final breath. Throm knew that was something he would have to get used to. After all, during war, death looms around every corner. Thank you all very much for watching the first episode of our Brothers Grudge. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I hope to see you all soon for the next episode.